Welcome to Friday night's video in our Master Series. This is the 112th video in our Master Series, and I believe the 9th video in our group mixing phase. So tonight, or in this video, I wanted to talk about a couple things. The first thing, this is kind of addendum to the last two videos. The first thing is mixing two pieces of audio or several pieces of audio together isn't that difficult. Using gain staging and, bringing things up to where they sound, underneath each other how they're supposed to be, whatever's supposed to be underneath whatever else. And really getting a picture in your mind of a stage, and seeing, well, that's out front, not trying to see it as a level from up and down, that it's a stage, and see where things, people are on the stage. Who's in your face, who's in the back, where are they at? And that's not that difficult of a concept. Most people will get that pretty easily. And, the procedure that I'm trying to lay out for you should help you really get going. Once you can get that down and you really understand that well, you'll start fine-tuning it, working it out the way you want to do it. You will eventually start adding to it, and doing it a little bit differently. Or, I don't know. I try to keep a pretty basic procedure so that, you got 3 steps forward, 1 step back, so that you're always going forward and going back and rechecking, and then going forward and always going back and rechecking, going forward and always going back and rechecking. That way that as you mix things together, that it comes out great. One of the biggest things that you're going to learn when you start mixing is this concept. This is a huge concept. When I did all the editing and processing and everything I did to the out front vocals, that was one track or individual, tracks that were in that subgroup, right? Well, when I mix them together, I've got a new track. Now, this new track we did not edit, we did not process, we did not do anything to it yet. So, because once they're combined, they become this new track. So, it's just like these two tracks are going to this bus on the leveling bus that we have set, and it's a whole new track that might need to be processed to come out sounding as good as it possibly can. So now this concept basically is that you almost have a brand new track to work with that you need to go back and do I need to re-edit anything to make it work well? Do I need to reprocess anything? All the steps that we've gone through so far in this Master Series and dealing with it like it's its own track. Like it's a brand new track that you didn't have when you first started this project. Does that make sense? If you can get that in your head, you will become a really good mixing engineer. Because just mixing the levels and things like that and putting things in their place and panning them out, that's not normally what makes it, bro. That's what makes it. Because then you've got, it was the Frau vocals. You recorded them, you edited them, you processed them, and you did subgroup processing and you did subgroup mixing on them, and here they are. And it's the vocals. Now you add in harmony. Now you have the vocal harmonies. Yeah, that's a new track, bro. And you need to go back and look and to see if you need to do any of those things again to make that sound like an awesome track. Does that make sense? If you can get that in your head, you'll become a much better engineer. Because as you go through there, now you have the vocal harm guitar. That's a brand new track, bro. And you need to go through and address any issues that might be happening. What you might have to do, you might have to do some re-editing, reprocessing. Heck, sometimes you might want to re-record some things and go change things on individual tracks, reprocess them, all kinds of things so that they sound, so that now when you get in here, you've got this one track that's the vocal harm guitar bass. Now you want that track to sound as good as possible. Does that make sense? One step at a time. Then you have the vocal harm guitar bass piano, right? So, and I know that sounds funny, it sounds comical, but if you look at that way, you will become a good mixing engineer unless you just can't hear worth the crap and you have bad taste that is not fixable. So, hopefully that's not the case. And you can maybe learn good taste. But that's a huge concept to get in your head. That concept is going to help you a lot more than most of the. Hopefully, everything we've talked about helps you a lot, but that will really push you over the top to really make you a good mixing engineer because it's one of the most important things about being a good mixing engineer. So next, we wanted to talk about a couple different things. First of all, we're just kind of doing a pickup video here. So the first of all, that basically, doing this on each individual section is not that big of a deal. And using the previous, sections that you've done as a reference to levels that you may be able to reuse again. And just keep that in mind. And also, if you have got a chorus here or something, bro, and you're going to copy it, it's not that big of a deal, and go, okay, and then the chorus is over here. The chorus actually starts right here, but I'm going to put a node there. I'm going to command paste that. And then this is where I actually want those nodes. So I'm going to drag them all back to right there and copy and paste that automation to there. It's not that hard of a deal to do. Does that make sense? So copy and paste the automation you've done, isn't that big a deal. So you don't have to redo it every time for the exact same section. Now, going over your overhead and getting clipping is a problem, and it has been sometimes, depending on how much headroom you give yourself. Let's say you've done the vocal, harmony, guitars, and the bass, and you're starting to get clipping, and you're just getting ready to go into the pianos. That means most of the time I'll go in there and I'll start with my out front track, and what I'll do is I'll bring that down -3 dB. I bring it down -3 dB exactly, and then I go to the next track and bring that section, that one down -3 dB, so on and so forth until I get to the piano. That way I got my headroom back. So that's a very simple concept and very easy technique to help you get back your headroom. The other thing is gradients between there. Sometimes you might get clicks, plops, and bleeps happening, and a lot of times that can be from fast automation moves. So if you've got this going on here, and let's say I've done this automation move here, I've get rid of that, and I've got this automation move that I did here. So if I've done a really fast automation move here, that, most of the time what I'm going to do is there would normally be a node right here that would be directly above this one. So basically I'd go back, a millisecond or something, put another node, and then delete that one. Does that make sense? So there's a gradient there to get rid of any click, plop, and bleep that might have happened. In different sections, or if you're doing it in the middle of a track going along, it can cause fast automation moves can cause problems. And keep that in mind whenever you're doing, moving stereo field, whenever you're dealing with putting things in their place and, differently in different movements, that can be an issue, and really keep an eye on that. So the next thing I want to talk about is, besides gradients, is that a lot of times, most of the time, whenever I'm doing all this, I did it pretty fast. So really, when you're going through it, you're going to spend a lot more time doing the things I showed you, and really taking your time. Whereas I'm trying to go through it pretty quick, so you get it laid out and see the step process, and start working on it. But a lot of times it just takes a lot more time. It's, you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. And when I'm doing it, I've got this metering bus that I do for doing side chaining, and this meter 1 bus for side chaining, and this metering bus for that I have sends coming off all the buses to, that I keep in a separate window, both of those open all the time. One of those from both, so I can be looking when I'm side chaining my EQ, and I can be looking at my metering bus meter, so I can check out my tonal balance or my EQ, or the spectrum of what's going on there, or just the level meters. I keep them open all the time. Phase meters, checking the phase as I'm going along. Am I having a phase issue? What's going on there? I keep them all open all the time, and check them a lot more than I showed you. I didn't hardly check them at all. I keep them open up in another window and check all that. What is my levels? What do my spectrum look like? What does my side chaining spectrum look like? What is the send, readings telling me? What is my tonal balance, my phase? What's happening? I'm checking that stuff all the time. So it's something to really keep in mind and make a note of, because I didn't really show that I do that when I was going through it in the last couple of videos, but I do while I'm doing it. So now the other thing to keep in mind is that I really wanted to talk about fine tuning. And this is a huge issue, because I watch people that are novice, that that don't have a whole lot of experience or knowledge, I should say, because if you do all the things we talked about so far well, you will spend a lot less time fine-tuning with your automation. I see people get out their drawing pen and they start doing this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, bro, I'm like, man, you know, you did absolutely no flow processing in your editing, did you? You know, and it's like, because if you do a really good job of everything I told you about, that a lot of times you can avoid a lot of really fine automation. So just keep that in mind. The the less time you spent in the previous phases doing a really good job, the more time you'll be spending with automation. And trust me, it can be a pain in the butt fussing with an out front vocal, doing a bunch of ridiculous automation to it to try and make it sit up above everything, you know, what it's supposed to. When if you'd have done your flow editing well and the flow editing that you're supposed to do in your harmonies and compress them down a little bit so you didn't have things jumping around, you know, and things like that, because you know, we talked about that. If you had compressed your harmonies a little bit, and it's like, well, you know, but the vocal goes up a little bit here, and I've got my flowing done, but it goes up a little bit here, and the harmonies doesn't because I compressed down a bit. Well, and then you go put a couple notes there, bro, and well, off you go, you know, because you did compress it down a little bit, so you didn't have them jumping around, huge dynamics bouncing around all over the place. It's pretty easy to fix that problem wherever there might be a problem. It might have been compressed a little bit, and that needs to come down, that needs to come up a little bit, and a couple spots along that, you know, chorus is much better than sitting there all day long going like that. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is that, you know, whenever you're doing equalization and things like that, or any type of processor you're using on your buses, that to learn how to automate it, because might be sometimes you did some automation on your vocals or your harmony or your guitar on this verse, that during the chorus that it's a little too bright now, and so you want to turn it down. Well, if you turn it down, then it's not going to sound good in the chorus, you know, or the verse or whatever. Does that make sense? So learn to automate it. That way you can have the automation of your parameters of your tools and your processors being able to change with the movements, just like, you know, the volume automation. You know, learn how to do that well, because it's very helpful and can really help you that way. It's not frightening. Does that make sense? And you just, you know, learn to do that, because it can be very helpful, because the more time you spend on making each individual movement sound as good as it can unto itself, the better your mix is going to come out sounding. So, peace, help, love. I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about panning and putting things in their place and how that might change from one movement to the other. And I will see you in the next video. I certainly hope that this mixing procedure is simple enough to help you get going, to show you some of the most important things you're going to have to deal with, and a simple way to get there, because, you know, it's going to take time, and having a really super complicated procedure is not going to help you spend the time when you need to as you go through that procedure to fix problems. That's where your time will be spent, not on the procedure itself most of the time. So peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed this video in our mixing phase, and I'll see you in the next video.